I do not support corruption.
Forward, all loyal viewers and subscribers. Today, we will be looking at opposition leader Mark Golding budget presentation for 2025-2026. Summer people, let's get into it and hear what Mark Golding got to say. And in the meantime, leave your thoughts and views in the comment section below. And let us have that discussion. And if you are new here, forward to the AVI-NUE. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Let's get into it and hear what the opposition leader Mark Golding got to say.
We are now ready. The People's National Party is ready to deliver quality representation, efficient management of government, and good governance for the people of Jamaica. We are ready to be Jamaica's champions of change. Mr. Speaker, over the past 13 years, Jamaica has put its public finances on a sound footing. The amount of our national debt relative to the size of our economy has been cut more or less in half over that period, with the debt now standing at roughly 69% of our annual gross domestic product. We are getting close to the 60% of GDP target that is fixed in our law as a fiscal target that we must reach by March 2028. This is a great national achievement. And it is the result of continuity of fiscal policy across successive political administrations. Some may ask, how has this benefited our people? It has meant that money that used to be spent on interest payments can now be spent on other things. It has provided choices as to how to allocate the national budget, choices that were not available before. Nevertheless, the outcome of all the sacrifices made to achieve this triumph in debt reduction has been deeply disappointing. Our national wealth is stagnant, as our economy is hardly growing. In fact, our economy experienced negative growth in 2024 and was in a technical recession at the end of the last 2 quarters in December 2024. Indeed, the credit rating agency, Fitch, in its recent assessment of Jamaica, made the telling point, and I quote, "Jamaica's credit ratings remain constrained by deep structural weaknesses, including subdued growth potential owing to a high crime rate, low productivity, and weak demographics, and vulnerability to external shocks, including weather-related." Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic indicators do not always tell the full story. Jamaica has statistically low overall unemployment numbers at 3.5%. However, Jamaica still suffers from chronic unemployment, low wages, and unstable incomes. According to the World Bank, 50% of non-agricultural jobs are informal, with no benefits or security. So, despite being employed, many Jamaicans are still struggling and are essentially working poor. They are unable to withstand sickness or other unexpected events. Too many of our people are in this vulnerable position, despite being employed. Many Jamaicans are unable to set aside any savings for the future, even though they have a job. Miss Pearl does some selling from a stall downtown. The official statistics consider her to be employed, but her earnings are modest, and she finds it hard to make ends meet. Due to the unstable nature of much of the employment from which the statistics are derived, many workers are effectively locked out of the housing market. Lending institutions are unwilling to extend mortgages to individuals whose employment situation is precarious. As pointed out last Thursday by our spokesperson for finance, this is reflected in the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, report. It says that 55%, i.e. more than half of Jamaicans, are facing moderate to severe food insecurity. Our people cannot afford to buy enough nutritious food to live a healthy life. People in Jamaica are skipping meals, forced to buy cheaper, less nutritious food. This state of food insecurity, Mr. Speaker, is reflected in adverse health outcomes. We have an epidemic of diabetes, many call it sugar, hypertension, many call it pressure, and far too many people are getting strokes. Some depend on cash pot winnings to determine whether they can provide a meal for their families on a given day. If employment is increasing, but your economy is not growing, it means that productivity is falling. If employment is increasing, but national wealth is stagnant, it means that jobs are being created, but they are low-paying jobs that cannot sustain a decent quality of life. Mr. Speaker, you cannot use statistics to tell a struggling man that he's not struggling. You cannot use statistics to tell a hungry child that she's not hungry, or an underpaid worker that he or she is doing well in life. People know what the reality of their lives is. They know that the official statistics can't yam. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has the second highest rate of brain drain in the world. The aspiration of most of our people is to migrate to other countries where there are better opportunities to step up in life. We struggle to keep our university graduates and other trained professionals here in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, another area where the data confirm what we have been saying is in our trade deficit. We are not producing enough, either for our own use or to sell abroad. Jamaica has a massive chronic trade deficit. Imports of US $6.1 million annually, but exports of just $1.5 million US in the first 10 months of 2024, that data is. This gap is mainly financed by remittances, money sent home by our family members in the diaspora who support their loved ones here at home. Now, even that is under some threat with all the global uncertainties. Jamaica cannot plan its future based on such a deep reliance on remittances, which we do not control. We need to execute a strategy to reduce this vulnerability. Our main imports are oil and gas, which in 2023 was at US $3.8 billion. And they remain our main sources of fuel for electricity and transportation. And also food to feed our people and our tourist visitors at $1.6 million US in 2023 is on that list. Mr. Speaker, we must replace imported fuels as much as possible by renewable energy sources. Like solar and hydro and wind that we are blessed with in abundance. Similarly, we must produce food here to rely less on imports from abroad. We need to grow the Jamaican economy so that everyone has the opportunity to earn a good life right here where we live. Mr. Speaker, after the Minister of Finance's presentation, the country really needs to be reminded that it was the last PNP administration which in 2014 passed the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Act. It set the targets that now establish 60% of debt to GDP as something that we are required to meet by a prescribed date, and the rules and the formula in the fifth schedule to the Act that the government now uses to determine how much fiscal space they have. I chaired the Legislation Committee of Cabinet, which finalized the details of that Act, working with others, including the present Fiscal Commissioner, who was at that time a technocrat in the Ministry of Finance. It is that transformational legislative achievement that has guided the fiscal policy decisions that have resulted in Jamaica's remarkable performance in debt reduction over the past 12 years. Even former Minister of Finance Nigel Clark had to acknowledge the PNP's role in steadying the ship in his 2020 budget presentation. He said, "Moving forward in a direction of national unity, I want to take a moment to recognize the work done by the prior administration, in particular, former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller and former Finance Minister Dr. Peter David Phillips in doggedly pursuing the extended fund facility and rallying Jamaicans around it." That's right. The historical record is clear. The crucial reforms and economic management that have created the long-term stability in Jamaica's finances began with the last PNP administration under Portia Simpson Miller with Dr. Peter Phillips as Finance Minister. They understood the historic nature of their assignment and they championed change. We acknowledge that the current government continued what we had started. Jamaica has benefited from continuity in this journey. True. But let no one forget, we did the heavy lifting. We did the heavy lifting to take Jamaica out of a deep debt crisis. And we set Jamaica on a sustainable fiscal path. And this was after the JLP government of 2007 to 2011 couldn't cross it and run left it. It was not in their DNA, right, Julian? On Thursday, our spokesperson for finance irrefutably established that Jamaica's tremendous achievement in public debt reduction is a PNP baby. We are proud of that achievement and that legacy, and we remain, most importantly, we remain fully committed to fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, we will not do anything that would jeopardize the sacrifices that have been made by the Jamaican people to get our country where we are. Mr. Speaker, the JLP government loves to refer to running with it. Why was that comment ever made 2 decades ago? The then finance minister was referring to the continuation of the construction of the East-West Highway from Mandela to Maypen, which the Jamaica Labour Party had opposed. So opposed to it were they that they disciplined the mayor of Spanish Town at the time, Dr. Raymond Notice, for attending the opening of that leg of the highway. But in what can only be called a supreme irony, they have extended the same highway to Williamsfield, and that same highway is now being sold on the market to raise money for this coming fiscal year's budget. Oh, what a tangled web. Oh, what a tangled web they weave. when they practice to deceive. Mr. Speaker, what about the current situation? The budget for this fiscal year now ending, 2024-25, was funded by over 70 billion of non-tax revenues, which came from the sale of 12 years of future income. That meant that what is to be earned over 12 years from Jamaica's future revenues from the Norman Manley International Airport was sold, and sold so that that money could be spent now. How was the money used? To finance various recurrent expenses, a one-time so-called reverse income tax credit, 1 year of some other tax relief that is going to be an ongoing annual cost to the budget, and some other expenditures. None of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country. Mr. Speaker, recurrent expenditures ought properly to be funded from revenues generated in the year in which those expenditures are incurred, not by selling off future income and leaving the cupboard empty for years to come. Mr. Speaker, not one school, not one hospital, not one water reservoir, no other lasting national asset has been built with those funds. Nothing that will deliver solid benefits to the country throughout those 12 years when the income has been disposed of. And Mr. Speaker, when you add to that the 9 billion expected from the sale of the government's remaining shares in Trans-Jamaican Highway, the highway which we built, it looks, sounds, and smells like running with it to me. Yes. And there is more of this planned for this coming fiscal year. The revenue estimates for 2025-26, the coming year, have $139.8 billion of non-tax revenues, including financial distributions of $66.2 billion. I inquired of the Ministry of Finance as to the composition of the $66.2 billion of financial distributions. And I was told that, and I quote, the major sources are the National Housing Trust and the monetization of contractual cash flows. Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that the government is still taking the $11.4 billion out of the National Housing Trust each year. And this is despite the current Prime Minister, when he was opposition leader, committing in 2013 to amend the law and ring-fence the funds for its primary purpose. Do you recall that, Mr. Prime Minister? Let me remind you of your words. In an All Angles interview in 2013, you were asked, is it your belief in principle that the funds of the National Housing Trust should be ring-fenced exclusively for the benefit of NHT contributors? And Mr. Prime Minister, you answered saying, it should be ring-fenced to use for the objects and purposes of the legislation. Well, that never happened, and you're still taking it to fund the annual budget of the country. Mr. Speaker, if 11.4 billion of 66.2 billion is being taken from the NHT, then the other 54.8 billion must be from the so-called monetization of cash flows. I inquired further of the Ministry of Finance, and it has been confirmed that another large sale of future income is to take place in the coming year. However, despite my asking, no further details have been provided. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, this will be another run-with-it transaction, selling off future revenues to fund expenditures for this year's budget. In other words, further emptying the cupboard in the coming years with nothing lasting to show for it. This is not sound fiscal management. To the contrary, it is playing fast and loose with the future of the country. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's economy needs to grow stronger and faster. When this government came to office 10 years ago, it quickly pronounced 5 in 4, 5% growth that would be achieved by the end of 4 years. You set up a ministry precisely named for achieving that, and you even had some economic ambassadors. Mr. Speaker, all this has been a colossal failure. Jamaica's annual growth rate from 2016 through 2019 was very sluggish, approximating just 1% per annum. We had the COVID hit, and then we had a short-lived post-recovery bounce after COVID. But the downward trajectory of growth has recommenced from the beginning of 2022. There was negative growth, as I've said, for the entire year of 2024, and we ended the year in a technical recession, there being 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. And I don't see why people are trying to deny that that is the case. I mean, it's just a technical definition and it's reality. The government blames the negative growth in 2024 on Hurricane Beryl, which caused approximately 2% of GDP in damage to the country, and some subsequent heavy rainfall. But the truth is that that really can't spin, Mr. Speaker, because several of our Caribbean neighbors, who in relative terms were hit even harder by Beryl, have been able to achieve economic growth of over 4% in 2024. The unacceptable situation is that Jamaica has lower growth rates than any other country in the Caribbean except Haiti, and Haiti has a unique set of challenges. So, after 9 years of this government, we have an economy stagnating like molasses, negative growth last year, a technical recession in the second half of the year, high cost of living, low standard of living, more people in low-paying jobs, brain drain like a runaway train, a chronic trade deficit, and the spending of future revenue that will leave the cupboard empty. The undeniable facts are that this government has mismanaged the economy and has failed to build on the strong growth, from the fiscal gains that we engineered when we were last in government. Jamaica cannot continue this way. Things have to change. Mr. Speaker, when we speak about change relating to the national development of the country, we know that it's a process. Change requires a vision. I stand on the shoulders of those who led the party that I now lead. They were champions of change, steering this nation to independence, in the case of the Right Excellent Norman Washington Manley, and through the choppy waters of national development, in the case of Michael Manley and P.J. Patterson and Portia Simpson Miller and Peter David Phillips. Social justice, equality of opportunity, these are the principles that guided their decisions and the processes, as they will be mine. United with fresh ideas and solid plans, we are ready to assume the mantle of government to deliver growth, opportunity, and progress for all Jamaicans. Mr. Speaker, in his inspiring presentation last Thursday, that has ignited
Mr. Speaker, the member's time for speaking having expired, I beg to move that his time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
The required desired motion is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, House Leader and colleagues. Mr. Speaker, in an inspiring presentation last Thursday that has ignited a flame of hope in many Jamaicans, our spokesperson on finance, the member for South East St. Andrew, outlined some of our plans. As he aptly put it, we will, and I quote, combine fiscal responsibility with innovative, bold leadership to break free from the cycle of low growth that has limited Jamaica's potential. End of quote. And he also said that we will, and I quote, relentlessly pursue deliberate, inclusive, and sustainable growth that reaches every corner of Jamaica. Growth that transforms our economy by moving beyond low-wage jobs to high-value industries, fostering innovation, and driving value-added exports. This means creating better-paying jobs, improving infrastructure, and empowering local businesses to compete on the global stage. Our focus is on growth that improves lives, lifts families out of poverty, and creates opportunities for all Jamaicans. This is how we will build a resilient economy, one that benefits the many, not the few, and addresses the urgent challenges of today while preparing for the opportunities of tomorrow. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, this constitutes the broad strategic objective to be pursued by the next PNP administration. And this is what securing the future of Jamaica demands at this stage of our national development. We took this country from the brink of economic disaster in 2012, and we set it on a firm path to sustainable recovery. We will do it again. We will do it again with the growth and development agenda that it needs.
That's right.
This is the only way that we can lift our people out of the cycle of poverty and underdevelopment.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Speaker, our spokesman on finance last Thursday spoke to our 4 E's strategy. The 4 E's being efficiency, education, energy, and emerging industries to drive inclusive and sustainable growth. As leader of the opposition, that is, who is preparing to assume government, it falls to me. It falls to me to set the tone of our upcoming leadership. There is a spiritual and ethical dimension to this, a 5th E on which our growth agenda is founded, and that is ethics. The change that Jamaica is crying out for cannot occur without these ethics. And it is ethics which is perhaps more than any other factor the defining difference between the government that you lead and the government that I will lead. Mr. Speaker, in this budget debate, and as the country moves towards the general elections, many proposals and promises will be made addressing matters of national importance, addressing the issues of growth, governance, education, crime, employment, social issues, etc. The achievement of our goals depends on human effort and human cooperation, built on our relationship with Almighty God. He is the source of our capacity to overcome our many challenges. A critical dimension which concerns many people a great deal, and which I feel compelled to address, is what may be referred to as the moral decay of the social fabric of our country. It is manifested in the lack of respect and care in how we treat each other, the callousness of behavior we see around us every day, and the corruption that has taken over the affairs of the nation. Indeed, it has everything to do with the values which uphold our society and our attitudes to life and to each other in our society. Mr. Speaker, former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson tried with a values and attitudes program, but unfortunately, it was sacrificed on the altar of partisan politics. And I believe former Prime Minister Bruce Golding has acknowledged his regret about that. Time come now for a national effort, for a non-political movement that embraces principles and practices for the spiritual, moral, and ethical upliftment of Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government is committed to such a process. We do not propose that it be led by us as politicians, as experience has taught that with that approach, it would likely not get off the ground. But it will be supported, facilitated, and championed by the next PNP government. Our vision is that this movement will be led by spiritual and civic leaders who have the reputation, credibility, commitment, and desire to do so. Collectively, Jamaicans must raise the bar as champions of change and restore the social fabric of this country. If we can do that, and I believe we will, it will make it so much easier to overcome all our challenges and achieve our economic and social goals. Mr. Speaker, I move to tackling inefficiency in government. Mr. Speaker, businesses in Jamaica continue to struggle due to structural barriers that limit their ability to grow, innovate, and compete in a global trading environment. Jamaica's bureaucracy continues to labor under procedures and rules, many of which are no longer fit for purpose. This creates delays, frustration, and additional costs to doing business here in Jamaica. The bureaucracy must be reformed to help our economy move forward efficiently, rather than being a drag on productivity and competitiveness.
That's right.
This is a critical area that needs priority attention. This government has really dropped the ball in that regard. As Prime Minister, I will establish and I will personally chair a task force using my skills and experience as a legislator and in government to tackle the inefficiencies head on. These problems cannot be solved on any permanent basis by a phone call from an influential person to a bureaucrat to beg them to do something. It can't work like that. We will remove or amend the laws and rules that slow down productivity and stand in the way of growth and development. We will get rid of outdated regulations, and we will drive the required changes to make the bureaucracy user-friendly and efficient for citizens and for business. That is my pledge to Jamaica. And anyone who knows me and knows of the career I've had knows that I have the capacity to deliver on that commitment. Mr. Speaker, the education system, our second E. The education system, our second E, is the center of our strategy. And I have said this consistently every year. The system is failing to provide consistent standards of performance across our schools. While there are some institutions of excellence in Jamaica, in which we are all very proud, over 30% of our children entering secondary school from primary school are unable to read and write or to do basic arithmetic. This flows into secondary schools and the performance there, where less than 20% of students leave with the minimum acceptable outcome of 5 subjects, including English and Maths. Mr. Speaker, this cannot be allowed to continue. The next PNP government will prioritize raising standards at the early childhood and primary levels, by addressing the needs of children from birth onwards. This will mean making investments with the goal that our children entering secondary school are indeed able to read, write, and do basic arithmetic and think critically. These investments are required in teacher training and compensation, infrastructure and technology, and in support services for parenting. Absenteeism is a big problem. Too many children are missing days from school each week. We will expand and improve the school feeding program to ensure adequate and proper nutrition and encourage school attendance. That is why, last Thursday, the Shadow Spokesman for Finance outlined our EASE program, EASE, which stands for Ensuring Adequate Sustenance for Education. We commit to providing a daily lunch meal at primary and secondary school for all children who need it. We commit to extending this to a daily breakfast thereafter as the fiscal situation improves. This will help us to ease the financial burden on parents and guardians. We are championing change by cushioning the cost of living crisis for the most vulnerable in society. And as another element of the EASE program, we commit to rolling out a transportation subsidy for students in areas not served by JUTC, which has provided subsidized fares for children and elderly since it commenced operation under a PNP administration. Our rural initiative for delivering education, the RIDE program, will assist rural students with their weekly transportation costs. Children in Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, students from Manchester and Clarendon, young people from Portland and St. Ann, indeed from all across the island in rural parishes, they will benefit. From Portland to Hanover. We need to give the next generation a better chance. So we are championing change. Mr. Speaker, my understanding is that the existing arrangements on the path in relation to transportation target only 7,500 students. Our aim is to expand it significantly over the next 3 years. Our target is to expand it to 50,000 students in that period. We will deliver the program by leveraging technology, ensuring accountability and transparency. We will start modestly and we will scale it up. We will partner with the schools, licensed transport operators and service stations to deliver the RIDE program via a cash-free system. We will say more about this program at an appropriate time. Mr. Speaker, they are getting rather excited. Mr. Speaker, if I can continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In keeping with our belief in a sound grounding, a solid grounding in ethics, we will equip our students with an understanding of the Constitution and their rights, and with social skills based on wholesome values and attitudes. A start has been made, but there is more to be done. We will deepen and entrench civics education as a core subject in the national curriculum. We will build the teachings of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey into the school curriculum. We will do so at all levels on an age-appropriate basis to encourage self-belief, personal responsibility, and self-actualization in our nation's youth. Mr. Speaker, ethics must be central to the development of our nation. Mr. Speaker, the funding to support children with special needs is woefully inadequate. We really see the need to address this matter, and we will provide resources to place emphasis on the diagnosis of learning disabilities and to strengthen shadow support for children who need it and other measures to support the education of children with special needs and their families. At the tertiary level, Jamaica is lagging behind in producing an educated workforce to drive national development, with less than 30% of eligible children enrolled in tertiary education, eligible students. We will provide one full scholarship for a university degree per family. This will provide an avenue of social mobility for each family and encourage broader participation in tertiary education in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government will go further than the other side have when it comes to student loans, while we acknowledge the adjustments that have been announced. We will cap loan payments for borrowers from the Student Loan Bureau at a manageable percentage of the borrower's actual income. In periods of unemployment, we will suspend loan payments and tack those payments onto the back end of their loans without penalties. Young professionals who borrowed student loans to invest in their education will no longer have to fret about the shackle of a bad credit score through no fault of their own. And we acknowledge that a number of our students, faced with the job market that now exists, so we will have a special amnesty program to allow students who are now in default to bring their loans current without incurring penalties and arrears interest. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica is suffering from high rates of attrition from our teaching profession. Classroom teachers feel underappreciated, and they have been leaving in droves for better pay and working conditions elsewhere. We need to encourage bright and committed Jamaicans to go into teaching and stay in the teaching profession. We need to reverse this trend by encouraging those people who would otherwise want to perhaps go elsewhere. We will ensure that teachers receive student debt reductions and motor vehicle concessions at levels that increase with their years of service in the teaching profession. We will ensure that teachers benefit from enhanced access to NHT loans and are given priority in housing allocations in NHT finance schemes. We will remove all taxes on laptops and tablets for students and teachers. And we will negotiate package deals to provide teachers with free internet service as a tool of their trade.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker, we have to be flexible, we have to be innovative, and we have to take the necessary steps to ensure that the teachers of this country stay in Jamaica and help to build our nation. And what is happening now cannot be allowed to continue. Mr. Speaker, data shows that the productivity of the Jamaican economy has been in long-term decline. Most of our employed workforce are in low-skilled, low-paying jobs, and approximately 60% of our workers have no formal certification. 75% of employed men and 55% of employed women, averaging 60% or thereabouts. We need to reduce the number of Jamaicans who do not hold certification. It has been a long-standing problem, and there's been no effective solution offered in the last 9 years. The next PNP government, Mr. Speaker, will reinvigorate Jamaica's systems of skills training and certification. That will help our national productivity to increase dramatically so that we can attract investment in high value-added industries that provide well-paying jobs for our people globally. This way we can put an end to the calls for the importation of labor, which are getting louder and louder. We will establish state-of-the-art vocational laboratories in all high schools, entrenching the vocational pathway in the 7-year secondary experience that leads the students to level 4 certification by the time they graduate and leave high school. We will revitalize and repurpose HEART so that it provides the training opportunities needed to build a fit-for-purpose workforce that is geared to meet the evolving needs of the 21st century economy. And Mr. Speaker, we also recognize the benefits of training in the private sector. The private sector training typically is more geared towards the actual knowledge and skills which businesses need to compete and expand. There's tremendous value in that. The competitiveness of our economy will therefore benefit from a significant expansion of the investment in training at the firm level. We will use HEART's resources to incentivize businesses to invest in training. We will match dollar for dollar the amount that a business spends on training so that we can expand the productivity and efficiency of Jamaica's workforce. Mr. Speaker, I move to the critical issue of energy. Our policies for energy, which is our third E, are critical for building a more efficient, competitive and resilient economic base for our country. Energy impacts every other sector in the economy. Weak policy execution for energy means a weak economy overall. Electricity prices in Jamaica are also way too high, undermining the competitiveness of our economy and hurting consumers. When we left office in 2016, the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour was 26 US cents. It is now over 40 US cents. The price of electricity has just about doubled under this government. The existing all-island electricity license held by Jamaica Public Service Company comes to an end in 2027. The initiation of related negotiations must commence this year, and we expect, in due course, to be leading those negotiations. It is a process that must be pursued with great diligence, expertise, and vision to ensure a more responsive and forward-looking approach to consumers' needs and business needs. Greater climate resilience for the country's transmission and distribution system must also be a part of the mix. Mr. Speaker, this government has failed to issue regular requests for proposals, RFPs, for additional renewable energy over their 8 years. In fact, there's only been one in the last 9 years. We will prioritize achieving the renewable energy target of 33% by 2030. We intend to issue utility-scale RFPs every 2 to 3 years to achieve our renewable energy target. And Mr. Speaker, there's an important social dimension to the high cost of energy. Theft is a major problem for the economic viability of the electricity system and exposes many families to legal and fire risks. For some time now, including in my budget presentation a year ago, I called for the government to get behind a massive drive to assist informal consumers of electricity to get regularized and become lawful customers of JPS. In 2014, when we were in office, we did a pilot in several communities, and I urged the government to re-examine the outcomes of that pilot so that as many people as possible can become lawful customers on the grid. I acknowledge the effort announced last Tuesday by the Minister But $1 billion is not enough to make the level of impact that is needed. At $50,000 per household, this will only extend to 20,000 households, which is roughly 300 households per constituency. And that will really barely scratch the surface. The survey of living conditions indicates that there are 1 million households in Jamaica, but there are only approximately 700,000 residential customers on the grid, meaning that the need probably extends to around 300,000 households. Our plan for this important initiative is more extensive. We see it as a crucial socio-economic imperative to decriminalize the electricity consumption of the many Jamaicans who cannot afford to undertake the process of regularization on their own. We are determined to empower these otherwise upstanding citizens to become lawful customers of the utility. It will reduce the risk of electrical fires, which are prevalent in many communities. It will provide a recognized proof of address to open bank accounts and for other processes of inclusion in society. And it will reduce the losses that push up the price of electricity for Jamaica's other customer base.
That's right.
We will invest in an electricity empowerment program. The program will cover the cost for low-income households to regularize their electricity connections, rewiring, inspection, certification, provide the incentive of a credit against their light bills for a period after they become customers, and provide their homes with solar panels to reduce their electricity bills and build climate sustainability. Solarizing homes in these communities will make their electricity consumption more affordable.
That's right.
And it also creates a capacity to interconnect homes in communities into microgrids to achieve further efficiency and further savings for residents, as has been done successfully in other countries such as Bangladesh. Mr. Speaker, reducing prices, increasing access with dignity, and improving efficiencies, that's the way that we will champion positive change in energy. And we are fortunate that our Shadow Minister for Energy is a man who, in his past record in government, has shown his capacity to achieve transformational change. He did it in the telecom sector, and he will do it in the energy sector. Mr. Speaker, our finance spokesperson spoke of 4 emerging industries to drive growth through economic diversification and innovation. These sectors have never before been central to a growth plan in Jamaica. I want to say something more on one of them, the cultural and creative industries. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has a proven competitive advantage in the cultural and creative industries. Our culture and its many creative manifestations, be it music, culinary arts, film, drama, our national language, all of these have become immensely popular and influential all over the world. The success achieved by our creative practitioners over the years has, for the most part, been through their own efforts and their own genius. The state has largely failed to put in place the strategic laws and systems of support and the institutional and physical structures of support that will enable our creative entrepreneurs and practitioners to move ahead. There was a time when the absence of state support did not seem to matter because the industry was thriving and growing anyway. But times have changed.
That's true.
We are now seeing a decline in the global prowess of our creative output, especially in popular music. Other countries and regions have developed their own genres that draw heavily on ours, our reggae and our dancehall in particular. They are achieving great global success, while we seem to be moving backwards. As a priority, Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government will engage our creative practitioners through our progressive approach, and that is to develop a growth and development strategy for their sector.
That's right.
Our national plan will bring sustainable solutions to support areas such as access to finance, education and training, and international marketing support for our creatives. we will provide an ecosystem that encourages local and international private sector investment in this sector. And we will expand the funding footprint of the creative sectors with a $1 billion fund for support and development that the finance spokesman spoke about last Thursday. Mr. Speaker, we will promote content, production, and intellectual property development. This will include a recording and rehearsal studio program, provided funding and technical assistance to build community and home studios and art-making spaces across Jamaica. This is going to provide additional pathways to wealth creation for youth who have a tremendous talent and passion for generating creative product. Registered creative practitioners will also benefit from a tools of trade import tax exemption on their instruments and equipment. Mr. Speaker, live entertainment is already a significant contributor to the economy and has the potential to do much more.
Yes.
We will support the emergence of a full year-round calendar of entertainment and cultural events and activities for the local and international marketing of the industry. We remain committed to the establishment of proper and properly equipped 24-hour entertainment zones in suitable locations across Jamaica. We started the process when we were last in government, and the shadow Minister for Education, who was then a Minister of State in the ministry with responsibility for entertainment, was the one who designed the concept. It has floundered under this government until very recently we've seen some action. Unfortunately, some environmental issues and so on seem to have been overlooked, and planning issues, but we intend to push this area more seriously. Mr. Speaker, we are disappointed with the very slow pace of disbursement to film projects from the funding that was provided in last year's budget to support film production. Not one, I'm told, not one of the 400 applicants has yet received any funds from this announcement that was made a year ago. Jamaica clearly has capacity to grow as a destination for international film production, but there needs to be an ecosystem that can support it. The applicable tax rules, the processes for the seamless and low-cost importation and re-export of required film production inputs like equipment and props and costumes, all these need to be put on a clear and investment-friendly footing. The bureaucracy is getting in the way of the film industry. We will change that. Mr. Speaker, last year I committed to conferring the Order of National Hero on the Honorable Robert Nesta Bob Marley. This will be a priority action when we form government.
That's right.
The year in which we celebrate the 80th year of his birth.
That's right.
As we cement that spirit of one love in Jamaica, we will also commemorate the significance of Fiwi language in our expressions and identity. We will also confer the Order of National Hero on the Honorable Louise Bennett Coverley, Miss Lou, making her Jamaica's second female national heroine. Time come for Bob Marley. Time come for Miss Lou. Mr. Speaker, the difficulty many Jamaicans are experiencing financially is matched by deficiencies in 5 sectors driven by public service delivery: citizen security and social transformation, land and housing, the maintenance of roads, agriculture and food security, and healthcare. Among the many gaps in our current policies, there is a deep sense of insecurity faced by Jamaicans affected by these deficiencies in policy. Our policies focus on filling those policy gaps. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of escalating violence under the JLP administration, in 2024, the number of murders, for the first time under this JLP administration, returned to the lower range that it obtained in the previous PNP administration, and we're very glad for that. This year, murders are down quite significantly, less than, by some around 30% down versus last year, 2024, a trend which every well-thinking Jamaican wishes to continue. Mr. Speaker, this reduction is a testament to the effectiveness of targeted policing strategies in replacement of the ineffective states of emergency that were previously employed by the andrewholness administration. The People's National Party has long advocated for data-driven, focused action to combat crime.
That's right.
Our stance has been validated by the recent successes from the security forces' adoption of these strategies. This progress, though overdue, offers hope for a safer Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, the PNP's principal stance against what we believe on legal advice to have been the serial and routine use of unconstitutional and ineffective states of emergency has been vindicated by the decline in murders. Since we stopped supporting the 90-day extensions, our resolution on this matter, our resolve, together with the various court challenges by us and others, have curtailed the use of SOEs that had been widespread from 2017 through 2023. The few declarations of states of emergency in 2024 and 2025 have been short-lived and merely performative. Mr. Speaker, this constitutes a time when an opposition, through its lack of support for the SOE extensions in Parliament and its challenge in court, has changed policy to ensure a more effective, just and better outcome for the people. Mr. Speaker, the adamant reliance on SOEs proved to be a costly misstep. Aimed at projecting toughness, the SOEs failed to dismantle criminal networks and address the root causes of violence. Instead, they eroded community trust and diverted critical resources. In contrast, our advocacy for selective targeting of violent criminals has shown measurable success, without the economic damage or the stigmatization caused by locking down entire communities. So, Mr. Speaker, while we welcome this decline in murders in recent times, the andrewholness administration must be held accountable for the 8 years when they stubbornly refused to abandon that SOE policy, resulting in 2,300 more murders occurring, a 25 increase than if they had just maintained the average annual murders that you inherited from the previous PNP administration. Bad policy has negative results. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister holds the dubious distinction that more Jamaicans have been murdered under his leadership as Prime Minister in 2 terms than under any 2 terms by a previous Prime Minister. That is our record. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 numbers are encouraging, and it is critical to assess the 8 preceding years of stagnation and missed opportunities in crime reduction. Under our administration from 2012 to 2015, the average annual murder figure was 1,129, still high, but the lowest in 2 decades. By contrast, the JLP's first 8 years of office, 2016 through to 2023, averaged 1,416 murders per year, a 25% increase that resulted in 2,300 more lives being lost than if our numbers had been maintained. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, even with the recent improvements, Jamaica's homicide rate remains alarmingly high. And this, compounded with the increase in mass shootings, is real cause for concern. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, financial crimes that are estimated to fleece victims of over $1 billion a year remain untracked by the JCF in their weekly serious and violent crimes report. These crimes often fund organized violence and need to be addressed through comprehensive tracking and enforcement. Our policy is to build on the recent trends in the direction we left it and to make the improvements sustainable. To do so, we cannot only rely on hard policing. A balanced approach is needed to tackle the root causes of crime. Mr. Speaker, the adoption of a public health approach to violence prevention, as seen in the private sector's Project STAR, aligns with the PNP's earlier initiative, which we called Unite for Change. This model treats violence similarly to a contagious disease and addresses root causes such as poverty, poor socialization, unemployment, and inadequate education. Jamaica has an opportunity to re-embrace this model and lead by example. To solidify the recent gains, Mr. Speaker, we must adopt a comprehensive, holistic approach to crime reduction. We will target interventions on the small percentage of people and places which are responsible for most of the violence. This includes enacting legislation along the lines that we proposed in 2023 for a court-supervised process of pre-charge detention of serious criminals on whom there is credible intelligence. This will facilitate prosecutable cases being built and charges being laid within a prescribed time frame without violating constitutional rights. Mr. Speaker, we will support law enforcement by extending the Jamaica Eye system of cameras to serve strategic areas that are not presently covered and support it with adequate maintenance arrangements. Mr. Speaker, we will balance law enforcement with prevention. Law enforcement must focus on violent offenders, but community programs are needed to address underlying causes of violent crime, like poverty and trauma and social exclusion and lack of opportunities. This dual strategy reduces harm and fosters trust between communities and police. And Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to big up and thank the brave members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force who put their lives on the line for all of us every day. They too need the benefit of a proper balance of policies that can bring down crime even further and achieve sustainable benefits for our people. Mr. Speaker, we will invest in individuals who are at risk, especially our youth, through a strategy of social transformation. This will help individuals manage anger, impulse behaviors, and conflicts. It will support programs that interrupt cycles of violence, like the Peace Management Initiative, and address the root causes of violent behavior to mitigate or reduce the likelihood of future offenses. It will also provide training for employment and entrepreneurial opportunities, financial literacy, conflict resolution, and overall civility. We have to get into the lives of those who are at risk of going down the wrong pathway and take them off of the wrong pathway and put them on the pathway to productive citizenship. And Mr. Speaker, we will rely on data and evidence, using rigorous data analysis to guide policy decisions, to assess the effectiveness of our programs, and to ensure that resources are allocated efficiently. While the reduction in crime celebrated today is a step in the right direction, the journey is far from over. Enforcement alone is not enough. Jamaica has to address the underlying conditions that perpetuate violence. By building peace, law, and order from the ground up, the nation can pave the way for a brighter and safer future. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the issue of land and housing. Every Jamaican aspires to own their own home, yet we face a 190,000 housing unit deficit which has forced 21% of our population into informal settlements. The prevalence of inequitable land distribution and unaffordable housing fuels intergenerational poverty and crime. It is time for real solutions, not photo ops for a PR exercise in social housing that is not really moving the needle. Under this government, Mr. Speaker, the performance of the National Housing Trust continues to be underwhelming, to say the least. If I can quote from the February 2025 fiscal policy paper that was tabled as one of the budget documents, it says, the NHT estimates slower than planned execution of its housing projects. And it goes on. The Trust expects to commence construction of 6,366 housing units compared to its original target of 15,009, and estimates to complete construction of 2,754 compared to its original target of 3,664. This has contributed to a $15.3 billion underspend in its housing expenditure, which stems predominantly from delays in the execution of its guaranteed purchase program. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, the political organization that I lead views shelter and housing as basic socioeconomic rights rather than a privilege. We have a proud legacy where housing is concerned. We do not bulldoze the homes of vulnerable families like what took place at Clifton near Bernard Lodge. We do not evict long-standing occupiers of land with well-established homes built on them, as was attempted at Mount Pleasant near Loidas Vale. We would not take NHT funds to build houses costing between $29 and $38 million when there's such a dire shortage of affordable housing for young professionals and public sector workers. Mr. Speaker, with a focus on building houses that are affordable to the people, the next PNP administration will take a multi-pronged strategy to tackling the housing crisis. Our first strategy is a set of measures relating to the National Housing Trust. We will stop the annual extraction of the $11.4 billion from the NHT to fund the budget. Mr. Speaker, when this was originally conceived, it was written into the law as a 4-year fiscal measure in the hardest of times during a tough IMF program when our debt was spiraling out of control. It was never our intention that it would go beyond 2017. This government criticized it very trenchantly when they were in opposition. They even supported a lawsuit, which was ultimately unsuccessful, to challenge it. But then they turned around when they got into government and they have extended it for an additional 8 years since 2017, including once again in this budget for 2025-26. Mr. Speaker, we will end this annual extraction of resources from the NHT. And our plan is to recapitalize the NHT with lands to restore value for the $136.8 billion that has been taken from it to fund successive budgets over the last 12 years. We will also repurpose the NHT to have its focus on its core mandate of providing affordable houses to contributors. Using this recapitalization mechanism, we will exclude the cost of land from the price of houses built by the NHT over the next 5 years, passing through a reduction of between $2.5 and $3 million to contributors purchasing those homes. That is social and economic justice for the contributors whose institution has been depleted of resources to ease the final burden on the country. Teachers, nurses, police officers, and other public servants, young professionals, persons with disabilities, and indeed an individual contributing to the NHT will be able to afford their own home. Mr. Speaker, the People's National Party knows that public sector workers are hurting from the way in which the pay rationalization was done. So we have come up with 3 measures to show our appreciation for their service to the nation. Our second strategy is a special National Housing Trust package of benefits for public servants, young people, and low-wage earners. Firstly, public sector workers. They used to enjoy a preferred rate of interest on their NHT loans, but this government took it away. We will restore public sector workers access to a reduction in their NHT interest rates. Police, nurses, teachers, doctors, firefighters, indeed all public servants who are NHT borrowers will get back this benefit. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we will give public sector workers a break when it comes to commencing their loan payments. Currently, when an NHT loan is disbursed, the borrower has to commence payments in the following month. We recognize that buying a home has a lot of other costs attached to it. We will therefore allow a public sector worker a 3-month moratorium period after disbursement of the loan before commencing any loan payments. And that will give them time to recover the expenses they've incurred, to buy some furniture, and to get their place ready to move in. And Mr. Speaker, we have one more goodie for our public sector workers. Currently, the debt service ratio, the DSR, required by the NHT is 33.3%. That means that the loan payments each month cannot exceed 33 1/3 of their gross salary. We are extending a preferred 40% debt service ratio to public sector workers for their NHT loans to allow them room to borrow a larger loan from the NHT to buy their home. Mr. Speaker, we recognize that often the hardest hurdle for young people in buying a home is the deposit. Well, young people, we have you in mind. The next PNP government will establish a special Young Owners Deposit Fund of $1 billion within the NHT. Using those NHT resources to enable young persons under 35 years of age to access $500,000 towards their deposit once they have been an NHT contributor for 2 years or more. They will be able to apply to the NHT and get their $500,000 deposit grant. Time come for young Jamaicans to own a home. And Mr. Speaker, we have to do something for the low-income borrowers from the fund, from the National Housing Trust. The cost of home insurance continues to increase. Last year alone, insurance for homes increased by 25%. And this is passed on to NHT borrowers as it's wrapped up in their monthly loan payments. So when you pay a loan, you pay for the principal, you pay for the accrued interest, and you pay for the insurance in the payment that you make. This is particularly hard on NHT borrowers at the lowest band who earn $30,000 or less per month. They also need a break. Mr. Speaker, the next PNP government will help these low-income NHT borrowers by absorbing the cost of the insurance on their homes. This means that their monthly payments will be lower and they will be able to afford a bigger mortgage loan. We are looking out for the low-income NHT borrowers. Mr. Speaker, many people Many people earn their living in the informal sector in Jamaica, and they are not able to produce a payslip to establish their income. Many other people have formal employment, but they end up paying rent because they cannot afford to save for the deposit to pay down on a house. We will roll out the NHT rent-to-own plan to address these two situations. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, a person earning in the informal economy who can't produce a payslip, but who wants to buy an NHT house, will be able to go into possession as a tenant, paying a monthly rent equivalent to a mortgage loan payment.
That's right.
And by establishing their ability to pay over a relatively short period of time, they will then be deemed eligible to access the mortgage loan from the NHT to buy the house. Having established proof of payment, they don't need to produce the payslip. Mr. Speaker, the other person who can't save enough for the deposit to buy a house will be able to rent an NHT house under the rent-to-own program, and a specified portion of the rent payments, and we're considering from 50 to 75%, will be accredited to the deposit, and he or of the
From the AVI-NUE, this is all for now, my people. What is your thoughts and view on all of this? Leave it in the comment section below. And if you are new here, welcome forward to the AVI-NUE. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the AVI-NUE. I'm out for now. Catch you in the next one.